Hello, Internet. We are back. And as you can see, we're still not back at the office. We're here in Chennai. That's where I am anyway. Swiss Alps, or close to it anyway. Kevin, you're still in London, I believe. Thank you for
Certainly am.
thank you for making the time. We're continuing with our entrepreneurship series. I must tell you this is important. I really believe in my heart that the time will come when you're going to need to make your own money. You know, there's a lot of you listening here with depending on your pensions. Now, if you look at history, you will see what happened in Zimbabwe. Those pensions suddenly got stopped paid, and when they haven't got stopped being paid, they became useless and without any value. So we need the skills. We need to learn these skills, and therefore, Kevin, thank you for being back. I believe we are talking about money again. So it's over to you, so I can cough in peace here in the background. I do apologize for that. Still have this illness. I don't think it's a dreaded disease, but let's not worry about it. Over to you, my friend.
Yep, thanks very much, Wes. Well, today what I'd like to do is obviously continue to stick on the freedom through money, and then specifically go to the first part. Now, everyone is in possession of the PDF from last week's one, which is, top right is the Euro unit. Then we go down to the leads unit, the more sales unit, the sales unit, and then the more sales unit. So what we want to do this week is to actually concentrate on the Euro unit, and then obviously get some actions going, because just like in all the previous videos, of course, you are the student. Okay, so what I basically, and this will be, you don't have to take notes on this because this will be on the PDF below the video. So just like there is a definition on the actual PDF of last week, summing up the money freedom, I've also got a definition for the Euro unit, which is the one we're going to spend time on today. So logically, next week it'll be the lead unit, the week thereafter the sales unit, and then the following week the more sales unit. So on the Euro unit, what we got there is I've got a definition that says you are pleasantly surprised at how being a Euro to a specific target market always broadens your Euro capabilities, confidence, and gives you an unfair advantage over the competitors. So that's really what it's all about. Now, I saw a posting where some guy was making reference to Euro, but then at the same time mentor. So I just want to bring clear clarity to this conversation, is that when you and your company is attempting to be a Euro to a single target market, you will obviously get some ideas and thoughts and tips from whoever your mentor is. So, the two are totally different. Where you're trying to be a Euro to a group of people, it's what you think you should be doing in your organization, and then touching sides with that Euro unit that you want to be a Euro to, so that you can continuously get their feedback. So, people talk about minimal viable proposition, is that I always come up with my own vision. But once I've come up with my own vision to be a Euro to a target market, obviously I get input from them. So let's crack on with the first exercise when it comes to the Euro unit. And this is something that I use with many, many aspects of my 8 freedoms. And that is, I go to the freedom through time, and I look at the second box there, and it's Pareto's law, the 80-20 principle. It's called the 80-20 principle, but it's not exactly that percentages. That 20% of your effort gives you 80% of your results. Sometimes people will put in 10% to get 90%, or some people will put in 30 to get 70. But anyhow, so what I'd like you to do is to grab a sheet and just have on the left-hand side a thin line all the way down and normal story. Okay. You put there weekly. And then at the top again, you put coerce, and you're the chief courageous officer. Okay. And then running from left to right on that sheet, have lots of lines running down. You don't have to do them all now, but have like sort of a maximum of about 20 lines from the top to the bottom. You don't have to do them all now. And then in the very, very last line on the right-hand side of the sheet, have something that's about a centimeter in width. And that column there, you'll have a heading called total, T-O-T-A-L. Okay, so just like with all the other freedoms, you've got to decide what type of person are you going to be when you play the game in one of these freedoms. So if we can recap quickly, right up there in the beginning, you said you're going to commit and be courageous from time to time. Now, are we 100% sure that you bring in that course to play the game? Or is it still a course that wants to stay in their comfort zone? Then, are you making an effort in the health side of your life to make sure that you come into these meetings alert, creative, rather than coming into the workplace regularly with the opposite, i.e. hangovers? So, that box has also got to be ticked before we move on today. And then, in the purpose one, you've got on the purpose video down there at the bottom, you've got a PDF, and there it goes through some of the guidelines for sense of purpose. So you're coming into what we're going to share today with a big sense of purpose. And then, the time one, which is the fourth one, are you making best use of your time? So talking about time, let's have a look now at something that I do, okay, when I play in the area of money, freedom through money. Okay, so what I basically do is I have something called the rev game. And that's not revving someone with mortars or with an RPG. That rev stands for revenue. Now, in some industries, they prefer looking at gross profit. You can call it whatever you want to. Okay, the important thing is learning how to play the game correctly. So what I do, and take now, for example, the euro unit. Let's say I'm working on the euro unit. Then what I would do is I would use that sheet that you've just created there and say, right, I'm going to, this morning, play, for example, 2 rev games on my euro unit. And what that would actually mean is that I would be very clear what I'm wanting to achieve. And then the rev game gets played like this. 40 minutes works for me. So 40 minutes, I focus on that euro unit. Then I take a break for 10 minutes. And then before I climb into the next 40 minutes, I say to myself, what's not working? What is working in that first 40 minutes? Because maybe you're getting distracted. Whatever it might be, you'll come up with those answers. Obviously, what's not working, you want to prevent that in the second half. And what is working, you potentially want to take over to the second half. Okay, so that's called playing the rev game. Okay, so let's actually now go and do something about the euro unit, because it's the euro unit that we're looking at today. So what we know there, okay, is that we want to establish who we want to be a hero to with whatever our offerings got. Whatever offering, should I say, we have. Okay, so on the euro unit, the first column, I would go and play a rev game. And in the first column, I would start writing down quotes. Everyone that comes to mind who I want to sell, whatever my business does. So whether you're selling widgets, or whether you're selling courses, or whether, like in our case, we're selling software, in the first column, you would write down there, okay, who all the markets are that you could potentially sell to. And you'll find that in that 40 minutes, you know, you'll run out of adding to that list. But that's fine. So in that 40 minutes, you just hang in, you get second wind, and then all of a sudden you're writing down again. So that would be the first column in terms of who do you want to be a hero to. Okay, so then the second column, that's where Pareto kicks in, 80-20. So if you had to look at the second column is to say, right, who are the ideal ones from that first column? What are the ideal ones from that first column? So let's say in the first column you had 20, just as an example. In that second column, try and pull over about 30 to 40% of them. So in other words, you're playing the game now of eliminating. There's no exact science behind 30 or 40%. You just pull X of them over that just seem to, in your mind, stand out more than the others. Okay, so then you'll do that, and that perhaps could go into the second half of the rev game. And then in the second half of the rev game, if you've got time over, you then go to the third column. And I call the third column the 4%er. The reason being, you take in Pareto's law, which is the 80-20 principle, okay, and you take in 20% of 20. Does that make sense? 20% of 20, and that's the 4%er. So now, in the third column, you're going to pull over from the second column, about 3 to 4 of them. So what's actually now happened, you spent 40 minutes, you've rested, and then you've done another 40 minutes. And now what you've got is you've landed up with 2 or 3 that you want to be a hero to. Now, I did this exercise with this new business of ours about 3 years ago. And as recently as 3 months ago, we narrowed that third column even further. So this is not a one-off exercise. And this is also not something where you're jumping all over the place. What you're basically doing is you're just looking at that big industry you're in, and you keep narrowing and narrowing and narrowing because you want to be the go-to person in a specific part of your industry. And a lot of people say to me, but what happens if you narrow it too much? I say, no, the human's brain doesn't work like that. I've not come across someone that's narrowed it too much. It's always the other way around. Our brain somehow thinks just, oh, if I can just get a little bit of a big market. And then you find it very tough in that big market because you're not necessarily lining up your proposition to a specific audience. And that's really what that exercise does. So you're taking the combination of the rev game where you get very serious And you then use those columns that I've just shown you now. And now you start to work on identifying who you want to be a hero to.
So I think what you did here is you identified your market, the ones you should target.
Correct. Correct.
I wonder, Kevin, if people realize how damn difficult that is without this formula of yours.
One of the reasons, because in South Africa, back in the early 90s, our competition was the banks. And what we had in offering, we had to charge the dealers because we had no bank. We had to charge them because all we had was what we were promising them to do for them. So we had to charge them, and we were up against those that were free. And for a good 6 months, the lenders couldn't understand why that, what they were giving for free, whether it was Stanik or whether it was Santam, Bankfern, or whether it was Westbank, they couldn't understand, those banks, why the dealers would pay us when they were giving it to the dealer for free. And I can tell you now that the reason why we got it right is that we didn't try to be, everything to everyone. We found a sweet spot in that industry that sells new cars, and we focused just on that. And that was far better. In other words, the dealers were prepared to pay us because we were their hero in a specific market. If we had gone too wide, then the dealers would have then said, well, in the two Kevin's offering, it's just similar to that we get for free. And no idiot is going to pay for something when you can get something equally for free. So for me, the safest way to crack the entrepreneurial code is to keep going narrower and narrower. I saw on the one posting where that same guy that had mentor and hero in the same sentence, he went on further to say that, you've got to be careful if you're trying to offer something, because as you start to age, you won't necessarily be up for it. And so I just want to make sure that people understand this correctly. My 8 freedoms that I'm sharing with you is not to become a successful, rugged individual. My 8 freedoms that I'm sharing with you is that you build a successful company, surrounding yourself with systems, technology, and people. That means you're always able to lift your motivation to the next level, because you're not doing the same things in your business over and over and over. That's not your job as an entrepreneurial person. So the guy probably has not listened to the previous videos, but if you just take his statement in isolation, he's 100% correct in saying, it's no use you, of course, being a hero to someone in isolation with no systems, no staff, no technology supporting you, because, you definitely will not be able to maintain the motivation over many decades.
It's an interesting thought which came up to me is, everybody used to talk about the word location, which is fine if you have a fish and chips shop and there's lots of feet walking past. But we're not in that world anymore, are we? It's a bit more complicated now.
Yes. And I can give you a living example of what I'm doing at the moment. We sell software, and software is just a commoditized product. You can be passionate about the software you've developed, but at the end of the day, it's commoditized. Now, our market, because it's selling to consultants, selling to coaches, selling to advisors, these are people that sell knowledge. They're in the knowledge industry. That's a 500 billion, it's a $500 billion industry in terms of all their invoices that they put in out to clients. Now, we know from our side that new business, the best place to go to is LinkedIn. But if you go there generic and you're targeting everyone, okay, you'll never get your name out there. So what we did is we took the 3 columns and said, right, who do we want to be a hero to? So right now, we've eliminated probably 95% of that market I've just described. We probably eliminated 95, and we're just focusing on the 5%. And I reckon that because of that industry that we've gone into that's continuously growing because of the disruption of technology, therefore industry's been disrupted, more of these high-powered consultants are going to be needed. So we know that as we pursue it, I'd probably say that in 3-4 years' time, we'll be chasing about 2% of that market. Not to get 2% of the market, but working in 2% of that market.
This is fantastic, Kevin, because if you waste time on the people who is not going to buy, what the hell have you achieved?
Correct.
What will you achieve? And the answer is
correct.
Nothing.
Absolutely.
So you need to be focused. It's useless for you. It's like artillery shell, isn't it? If you're calling a 2 battalion, the shell's on a copy and there's no one there, it's not going to help your mates when you attack where they are.
Exactly. Okay, so one of the things that, so once we've established who our target market is, so right now, our target market is consultants who have bought a franchise from an organization that has knowledge that they can go and purchase as a franchise, work under the rules of franchising, and then they go out and they find their clients. And in our case, all our clients are B2B. Now, we find someone that's invested heavily in a franchise. What they do is they take the box that's been given to them with all the knowledge and they get on with running a business. Whereas if you find a consultant, let's say an AI consultant that's very passionate about AI and he's on his own, then I find that they spend far too much time tinkering around with their solution. Because, you know, that's what they love. They don't necessarily love marketing and selling. Now, because our product is a marketing product that's given to them, you know, then obviously it's good to be working with people that show a lot of respect towards marketing. So, you know, that works exceptionally well for us. Now, in that market that we're in, we'll just continue to narrow it. Okay, so it's very important, okay, that you don't use these things that I'm sharing with you in isolation. You need to make sure you're courageous when it comes to the Euro unit. You need to make sure it's aligned with your purpose. You know, you need to use the rev game so it's dedicated focus to the game that you're playing. Okay, and in this case, this particular video, it's around the Euro unit and how do you go about establishing who you want to be a hero to? Well, you use those 3 columns that I've given you and you keep visiting it as often as you need to visit. I go into the Euro unit regularly, either with myself or with my 2 partners, but we continuously looking at, you know, who do we really want to be a hero to? Because what actually happens is that your capabilities increase, not just any capabilities, but Euro capabilities that are well respected by your audience. And there's no doubt about it that you start to get an unfair advantage over your competitors. And there's nothing better for me than to have an unfair advantage over the competitors. And this is not by doing some stupid thing like dropping your price. Because if you're a hero to a subset, you know, then you are able to move away from commodity prices and charge decent prices to your clients. Okay, so that's the first part of the Euro unit. Now, when it comes to how do you become that hero? Because, I mean, it's one thing to identify a Euro market that you want to be in, but you've got to do some work on making sure that what you're delivering is actually a euro solution. And so you can use the same methods we've just described here now, where you can say, right, I'm going to do a couple of rev games. On those 3 columns. But now, instead of putting in those 3 columns who it is that you want to be a hero to, what you do in the first column, you exhaust yourself with all the features of whatever it is that you're selling. And not limiting yourself. Even if it's an insignificant little feature, you put it in that first column. You absolutely exhaust that list. And then in the rev game, you take the break, and then you go into the second half, you pull over now 30-40% of them. So in other words, you're now saying, oh, these are more important features, so you pull them over. And then you sit there with a smaller list. And then you go to the third column. And you come up with fewer. And you've put passion into it because in your freedom through purpose, this is what you're passionate about. You've put in the quality time. I say quality time. And now you've come up with a couple. And then internally what we do, 3 of us would discuss it, make sense of it. And then what we'll do is we would go out to the market and not to friends, associates. We're talking about people that are going to pay you if you come up with something good. It's always best to test things in the market with your future check writers. You know, assuming this is a new initiative you're involved in. If you come up with a new idea or a new thought, then you can go to your current clients as well. And what we've done is we've come up with a set of questions, which I will share next week. Now, in actual fact, let's go through some of them now. So what I'd basically be doing is I'd be saying to the clients, okay, and we will see this when we get to the freedom of relationship. It will go like this. So tell me, Chris, and let's say you're an existing client. Because if we were sitting here a year from today and you were looking back on this year, what needs to happen for you to be happy in your business? In other words, happy with your progress over the next year. And then you go quiet and you let the person write everything down. We don't email people this. We would do it in a Zoom with them. And they write everything down. Say, oh, that's good. So, based on that, bigger future, what are the challenges that you have? In other words, the fears that they have that need to be eliminated. What are the opportunities that you need to maximize? And what are the strengths that you've already got that you need to reinforce? Now, because we're applying the principle of euro unit and we're going narrower and narrower and narrower and narrow, when we do about 12 of these people with, each of us doing 4, or in some cases, I'll do 1 or 2 and then they'll do the 10. What we establish is that you eventually get to the common denominator. By asking the questions like that, you really get to the sweet spot. The reason being, if you take, for example, in my industry that I'm in at the moment, the people sell software. And then the software companies talk about the features and benefits. I avoid all of that. And what I do is I actually say to them, what's the result you're trying to get out of all of this? And they go, more revenue. I go, well, there we go, boys. I say to my partners, it's consistently coming through. They want to increase their revenue. Now, obviously, to increase their revenue, there's 2 or 3 things are going to happen before the revenue. So what we do is we focus on that, and then the software just becomes a means to an end. It just becomes an absolute means to an end. Now, when we were in the motor industry, I did exactly the same thing. In the dealers, we had software companies come in there telling them about this wonderful software they can use on their showroom. But, they came across like software people. Then the finance houses would come in there and say, we've got the best finance products and we'll teach you how to, sell them, etc., and understand them. Then the insurance people would come in there. So when we went in there, we said to the dealers, so what is it that you want out of your finance and insurance profit department? Oh, well, I want easy products to sell. I want to earn a bit of commission. I don't want any comebacks, etc., etc. Well, so why do you want all of that, Mr. Dealer? And they go, well, the income you get from it is not that bad. So, we put it there under general on our income and expenditure. So, that's interesting. So are you saying that in other parts of your dealership, you have specific lines for your income, like your parts, your workshop, your selling of your cars? Oh, yeah, absolutely. And then on finance and insurance that we're speaking to you about, you say you just put it under general. Yes, because it's not something you can quite control, etc. It would be nice to control it. Oh, that's interesting. So I tell you what, with us, if we're going to do business with you, okay, we're going to be talking less about the software which we provide. We're going to be talking less about the finance and insurance products that we're going to be using. And what we're going to do, and how would you like this? We're going to have the general removed on your income and expenditure, and it's going to be like your other 3 departments. We're going to give it a proper name. And then just like your 3 other departments, we're going to be able to budget every year and then help you achieve it every month. How does that sound? Well, that's a no-brainer. So what that actually meant is that we were getting to the conversation that resonates with them intellectually and emotionally. Whereas our competitors were going in there and speaking to them about something that they intellectually got, but emotionally, it was nowhere near what they were used to in their 3 other departments. And that was basically that gave us an unfair advantage over competitors, especially the lenders and insurers that were offering it for free. So that's the best test. Is to say, oh, what would I be selling here and what would I sell it for if my competitors were giving it for free? It gets you to start thinking a little bit smarter, a little bit more creative. And that's really what the Euro Unit's all about. It's coming up with all the clever stuff so that when you then go to the leads unit and you go to the sales unit, you go to the more sales unit that we will cover, okay, you're coming off a solid platform. If we had state-of-the-art gunships delivered to us, what a brilliant back office solution that would be, to be able to go to the guys up on the board and say, we got these new gunships for you. I mean, whoever broke that news to Neil Ellis would have been a hero. Okay, don't say the enemy would have seen us as a hero. They might have been envious. So that's what the Euro Unit is all about. I mean, it's giving and you don't have to write this down because it's actually on the one page. It's actually giving the client that experience that's unrivaled. If you had to stack yourself up against the competitors, unrivaled experience. Okay. However you package in it, it's unrivaled. Okay, and that's what gives you the unfair advantage. And the value in the solution is unrivaled. So in other words, what you're trying to define is what is that algorithm that gets your market to say, wow, I've got to be dealing with quiz. What's the algorithm? And in our case, in the example I've just given you, in my current business, okay, is we are slowly but surely building up a reputation, just like I did in the dealerships, is, oh, yeah, you must get hold of those guys. You just listen to them and your revenue goes to where you want it. Oh, but I thought they were a software company. Yeah, they might use software, but they're the revenue guys. And that's what gives you, that unfair advantage because it's unrivaled. Okay, now to achieve that on the front stage with your clients and that, you've got to have a backstage. And the backstage is where you start building up unrivaled capability. Or you could put in brackets, this is where you're building up euro capability between you and the client. Okay, and that's also in the backstage is where you build up unrivaled teamwork. So you're taking the technologies that you need in your business together with the people that are helping you, and you make it unrivaled teamwork. Because we all know in your business, if multiple departments or multiple people are involved with your clients, you're as strong as your weakest link. So one of the ways of lifting the game is to actually have unrivaled teamwork. So when you're actually attacking this euro unit, you're attacking it from two angles using the two processes I've given you today. One, playing the rev game. And two, using the three columns to come up with the important things, both on the front stage, in other words, in your relationship with the client, and then the backstage is, using technology and teamwork to give you that unfair advantage. Now, I want to say to the audience out there is that at the beginning of every quarter, and I think we mentioned this in the last video just before we wrap up, every quarter we take these 4 in the money unit and we come up with a goal for each of them, a big goal for the quarter. And it's aligned with our long-term vision using the freedom, number 8, which is freedom through growth. To recap, goal, what do you want? Why do you want it? Result, obstacle, and who, not how, who's going to be helping you. We come up with one goal for the euro unit, the lead unit, the sales unit, and the more sales unit at the beginning of every quarter. And then what actually happens is we play rev games to get to that result that we're seeking. So we run it in a very systematical way. And so what I make sure with everyone is that we don't clutter too much of what we're doing. We keep it very simple, minimalistic, but what we do know is what we're focusing on is vitally important. So basically, we would, at the beginning of each week, individually, because we each got our own goals and that, we're going, right, so what must I do on the euro unit this week? Oh, it might only be half a game, but we write it down. What should I be doing on the leads unit? Oh, no, the leads unit, I should be looking for new clients. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do 15 rev games on the leads unit. What am I going to do on the sales unit? Well, sales are not applicable to me because I do marketing. So therefore, Natalie is going to be doing 15 rev games on the sales unit. And then someone else will be responsible for the more sales unit. So we take in those quarterly goals and we're breaking them down into chunk size. Now, what I've come to establish, I'm conscientiously using the rev game in the business for the parts that I'm responsible for. And I'm finding that I need to be effective and to be a hero to my fellow directors. I'm finding that I need to play between 15 and 18 rev games a week. That's it. And as I do it more conscientiously and as I get better at it, because I'm into my 17th quarter now doing these things, I can feel that I probably need to do about 12 a week. That means I'm available for anything and everything I want to get involved in after playing the 12 games.
Is it possible for you by this stage to play them in your head without writing down?
Well, what I would do is I would do the 4 for the quarter, because my whole business is on the internet, but I've got one book that I use. And this book here will last me about 2 years, quite a thick book. And there's certain things that are right in here. So my 4 goals are always right in here. It's just something that I want to handwrite, although the rest of my business is on the internet. So I write those 4 goals, then that actually means when I go to my weekly, I know exactly what I've got to do. And then I just go play the rev games. So it's like basically 3 steps. But the money, I've got to emphasize, is in the rev games. So, you've got to emphasize the importance of quality rev games before just chalking up lots of games. So, if you look at that last column that I mentioned to you, at the end of the week, I just write the number down there. I did 17. And then I look and think, 2 of the games, I just ticked boxes there. They weren't quality games. I eliminate them. So I'm down to 15. So it's quality first and then quantity. It's almost like sleep. If you're battling with sleep, you don't get your number of hours of sleep up first. You first go for quality and then quantity. It's exactly the same thing with the rev games. Quality first, quantity will come.
And I wish to say again, this will work on any business.
Any business. Any business. When I say any business, I must just put a warning on these 8 freedoms. This is for people who are wanting to grow companies. And I'm not talking about registering your firm as a company like PDY Limited and then remaining single, just yourself in the business. I'm talking about people that are going to surround themselves with team members, technology, to just keep growing the business. This works, okay? Obviously, if you come to individuals who just want to be like solo, rugged individuals, some of the stuff doesn't necessarily work. I must just also mention that in that posting, the guy made reference to lots of people who you should be following and that. And it got me thinking as to, do I have any heroes that have helped me when it comes to these 4 units, because I came up with these 4 units. And I would say there's a guy that must be in his late 70s now, maybe even in his early 80s, from the United States, a guy called Michael Gerber. And he came up with a book in 1995 called The E-Myth. And this is definitely a book worth getting, because he tells a story in the book of a person working in an organization and then having a great desire to go out and be self-employed. So, for example, let's say you are a baker and you open up a bakery. Now, when you worked for a large organization, there you were the technician. You just went in every morning and you did the baking. And you loved the baking and you were passionate about the baking. But then you realized to run a bakery, from time to time, you got to be the manager as well. You can't just be the technician making the bread. You also have to be the manager. You go, huh? And then you discover also that you have to be the business person, because there's 3 distinct different jobs. And then what actually happens is you start to neglect things. And then many people want to just be the technician. So they neglect a bit of the management stuff, and they neglect a little bit of the business stuff. And then those things start to creep up on you, and that starts to make life very uncomfortable in your business. And then you actually hate being a baker. And that's what this book's all about. It teaches you how, step by step, to separate the 3. And we know now this for a fact, Chris, that a huge percentage of people that are going out self-employed need to get to grips with this. Otherwise, they're going to end up being that rugged individual. And then they say 10 years later, yeah, I prefer working on my own. But that's not true, because on many other conversations, you were telling me you don't like what you're doing. Well, the reason being is you can't do the same thing over and over and over again and stay motivated. Now, this guy here, I don't have many mentors, but I go back to this book regularly. And I told these young directors that I invested into, including my daughter, you make sure that you've actually studied, not read, that you've studied this book. Because this book ain't going to go away in my conversations with you. So I would recommend this book. So I built those 4 units based on my own experience at it every week, every quarter, and then having got the basics from this gentleman. So there we go, Chris. So in conclusion, would you say today you got some direction?
Yes, indeed. Thank you.
Would you say when it comes specifically to the freedom through money, that you got some confidence on this part of?
Yeah.
The freedom exercise?
Absolutely, yes.
And would you say today on the Euro unit that you were looking at the rev game and the 3 columns and the thought process that goes into it, that you got some new capability out of it?
Absolutely. I feel much more, not comfortable, confident, because I know where the market is.
Fantastic. So I say then also to the viewers out there, that if you spend quality time with these exercises and you feel that you've got some direction, more confidence and new capability, this is all coming free of charge. But what we are asking is that if you've got something, if you could go down to the bank details of my unit that I was part of, and donations would be, hugely appreciated. There's some tough times out there for a lot of people, and we want to make sure that our unit is in a position to be able to help some of them.
I have a last question for you. If we want to get hold of this book, is it still available at Amazon?
Oh, yeah. The E-Myth Revisited, Michael Gerber.
At Gerber.
South Africans, you can call him Gerber.
Oh, I just wanted to know now. Yeah.
American.
I'm going to try and get hold of that book for sure.
It's a wonderful story, but it makes perfect sense. You know, he uses a living example in the book. It says here, the entrepreneurial myth, the myth that most people who start small businesses are entrepreneurs too. The fatal assumption that an individual who understands the technical work of a business, in the case of the baking, can successfully run a business that does that technical work. You can't survive on just the technical stuff. Very good.
No, we often see that. I know at my wife's schools, there are a few teachers who think they can run a school. They're good teachers.
Yes.
It takes a lot more. You need business skills.
I found a lazy solution. I still believe highly in this book, and I revisit it. And as I said to you, I get my other guys to read it, study it. But I found the lazy solution. I said to myself, I read an article of a guy that was in the Select Scout, Schulenberg, a phenomenal special forces guy. Eventually went to South African Special Forces. I think his name was it Dirk Schulenberg? Dirk Schulenberg? Anyhow, so he created the one-man team where they would fly in and then they would break up and each guy would go their own way and they would do reconnaissance work. And I said to myself, I would draw the line in two. So in other words, my experience in Angola said to me, yeah, I could be up for it, get some training. I could go down to working in a two-man team, but I wouldn't cross the line to work on my own. And it was funny enough, I always remember that. And when I went into business, I said to myself, I'll never go into business on my own. I will always take time and find a proper partner. So I'm into my third business now. And I've always had a business partner. So it helps to shortcut a lot of this. But there's downsides to partners because you've got to share the money. There's downside to partners. You might not choose the right one, but, touch wood, I've never had problems with any of that. My share that I'm getting, I'm more than happy with. But what it does do, it enables me to say, right, that part of the business, it's not going to be me from the outset.
Yeah, I must say that when you go into partnership with somebody, just make sure you've got the legal agreements.
Yes.
Signed at the background, just for
yes.
And key man policies, of course, if one of you should pass.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well,
Any other questions, Chris?
No, I'm actually just excited. Every time I'm done with you, I actually feel like, man, let's go and fill in these things properly. And let's see what answers we get. And once we've got the answers, I think the process to get through to the money side, making the money, the return of investment, that will be much easier than just to barge in and think you're just going to make it. It doesn't work like that. It's like that old story, the only job you start at the top is digging graves or something. What does it?
Yeah.
Something like that. Or if your daddy is a rich man already, well then, man, why do you even work? You know what I mean? But most of us are not like that. Most of us really have to use our skills, our wits. And you're out in a world which you don't understand. Trust me, when I came out of the police, spent 6 years at university, became an attorney, I walked into a world of sharks, which you don't understand. And then, of course, they will bite you in the ass. It's that simple. There's certain knowledge you just need.
Yeah. Well, if you look at this freedom through money and you take the first part of 4, which is the euro unit. You just do 2 rev gains, and you use the 3 columns. You're going to be much, much further down the road in who you want to be a euro to and what it is that you should be offering than you were before you did the 2 rev games. And these are not one-off games. You do it regularly to keep narrowing the target market, to keep improving the offering, because ultimately you want an unfair advantage over the competitors.
Yeah, I like that word, unfair advantage.
Yes.
You need it. I mean, because let's be clear, they'll take one over you if it's possible.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's amazing. Some people go, unfair, but is that ethical? I go, oh, come on, do me a favor. We're not talking about something that's illegal. We're talking about simply using your creativity to come up with something that gives you the edge over the competitor. So if you don't like the word unfair, put some other word in front of it. Differential advantage.
I cannot agree with you more. This is not a legal term. Unfair advantage in a legal term is something completely different. Here we're talking about getting ahead. So not by cheating, not by sleeping with the enemy, whatever, things like that. Not by blackmail. Just by being clever, by being smart.
Yep. And like I said, back on the front stage and the back, you're putting processes together that are unrivaled. And that's what gives you the unfair advantage. You don't have to do it overnight. So, for me, I don't see my business as one-dimensional. I see it as 4-dimensional. What am I doing in the euro unit? What I'm going to do in the leads unit? What I'm going to do in the sales unit? And what I'm going to do with our clients afterwards? Everything else comes into play. And you'll see when you go through all 4, there's very little left in your business that you've got to attend to. It covers everything, processes, the quality, because it's unrivaled in those categories.
Yes, and because you keep on doing it, you will probably never stagnate, so the word in English. It will never become old-fashioned because you'll carry on.
Yes, yes. I'm glad you actually mentioned that. I might have mentioned this before, but some guy said to me one day, oh, so you're growing an unbelievable system in that here. He said, what you should do is you go onto YouTube and type in there how it's made. How it's made. Well, let me tell you, it was a Sunday afternoon. Back to back, I watched about 4 hours. And I'll never forget the first thing that I watched was how they were making just a basic propeller for a boat. Just a basic, but it went through all those stations. So it looked very difficult. Okay. But once they took it through the 32 stations in the factory, it started to look very elegant the way they were doing it. And it looked very simple. And then I realized, wow, if you give your head enough of these YouTube, how it's made, Kev, you'll start to think like that. Systemize, automate, systemize, automate. And then I came across someone that I shared it with, and he said, yep, he said, I learned something from a guy who many years ago opened up a boutique hotel, and he had quite a few of them all over the world. And he came up with this idea of is you systemize the predictables, whether it's in your leads department, your sales department, or the more sales, you systemize the predictables and you humanize the unpredictables. In other words, there's always a human on hand to get involved in something that's not predictable. So he said, right, I'm going to open up these hotels now. What can we systemize? Systemize. That means the staff are always alert to things that are not working properly. I thought to myself, that's fantastic.
Okay, well, Kevin, it seems we've come to the end of this one too. As always, I thank you. You're welcome to my comments here, all of you. Don't think because we talk about your comments that we are disparaging. That's such a word in English. We're not. So you're welcome to make comments, welcome to spread the word, support the Free to Battalion Fund if it's possible for you to do so. And until we meet again, God bless.